Let's have a better look at tomorrow morning's newspapers now. I'm joined by the historian and broadcaster Kate Williams. And Kate, it was very nice to see the Olympic Stadium lit up again. I've missed it, haven't you, after the last 2 weeks?
I was so miserable the day after it finished. I was just like, my goodness, how can I fill my time now? I can't switch on the TV at 10 a.m. and watch rowing. I'm very sad. But it's all back. And
yeah, it is.
You know, these papers are just marvellous. Of course, there are a lot of big stories all over the world, but there's one big story in Britain that's dominating all the front pages of our newspapers, and they are so beautiful. I don't think I've ever seen such a selection of such joyous papers. They're just gorgeous. These incredible shots. They're a gift to picture editors, and they're all souvenir editions. And this Times one, I think, is wonderful. This big wraparound of this Times souvenir edition. I just, you know, during the Olympics, I just love buying the newspapers. There's a lot said about, you know, oh, the newspapers are dropping, they're not relevant anymore. Well, the way in which they can be so relevant is this wonderful photojournalism, this beautiful picture here of the umbrellas, and this great quote from Stephen Hawking, who, of course, opened the ceremony this evening, has been the hero of the ceremony. Look up at the stars and not down at your feet, be curious. It's just marvellous. And again, we've got the same similar image, a similar one on the front of the Independent here, everyone flying through the sky with their umbrellas like Mary Poppins. It's just beautiful.
Let's just have a look at the Independent in 1 second. As you say, it's when the newspapers come into their own, isn't it? Because you can see these images online, but there's nothing quite being able to sort of hold it in your hand and really examine it closely.
And have a souvenir edition, exactly. I think a lot of people are buying them and they're going to treasure them. They're going to absolutely treasure them. This incredible summer we've had in Britain. You know, we were all a bit nervous about the Olympics. Lots of other countries thought we wouldn't do it, and it's just been an incredible celebration. And of course, today, you know, all these athletes, these real heroes, people who've absolutely fought to get here. I mean, every athlete has to fight to get to the Olympic Games, but you might say the Paralympians have to fight so much harder than anyone else. These incredible stories they have, and it's really terribly moving. I think that no one there tonight, or there's 80,000 people watching and apparently 1 billion watching on TV, could have failed to be moved by this celebration of what disabled people can give to us. They're often marginalised, they're often ignored. Disabled people have said they feel a rise in hate crime, and here it's about this creativity, this importance, and so many of the performers were themselves disabled as well in tonight's ceremonies.
It did feel like a very different experience from the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, didn't it? And people really playing to the camera as they were walking around when the athletes were introduced.
Yes, absolutely. They were just delighted. They were so thrilled, and just you really saw the joy on people's faces. And I think, you know, we were all a bit nervous about the opening ceremony. How was it going to go? We were all worried about the transport. Now we know that Britain can host a fabulous Olympic Games, and we can just relax and enjoy it.
So let's just look at the eye. That's the same quote there from "Look up at the stars, not down at your feet, be curious," quoting Stephen Hawking again, as you say, and a very different picture on the Daily Mail, a giant apple rolling around
the stadium. And of course, apples were a crucial part of the Olympic ceremony. And I just, you know, this entire theme of the beginning of knowledge and enlightenment and history has been running through the Olympic Games. And these ceremonies are really telling a story in a way that I don't think any other ceremony ever has before.
This is the Isaac Newton apple, isn't it? The gravity apple that we probably
yes, we're getting a lot of Isaac, double Isaac, so Hurricane Isaac and the Isaac Newton apple. But and this is, I think, really shows the very interesting from the Mail as well, a paper in which, you know, does often see itself as exposing people cheating on disability benefits. It sees it absolute focus on the importance of disabled people. And we, you know, Jane Tanni-Grey-Thompson has said herself that there seems to be two types of disabled people. Often it's said one type of going for gold, one type of being demonised. And I think we need to show how important they are. And I really think we're going to see a lot of Paralympian success very soon.
There's a kind of with Stephen Hawking there's a sort of a space quality to some of these headlines. The sun liftoff. It does look like there's a sort of spacecraft in the middle of the stadium about to blast off into space.
It does, and of course we've had so much about space this week with the sad death of Neil Armstrong, and exactly what Professor Hawking was saying, you know, look up at the stars, was very like what the Armstrong family said about Neil. You know, if you think of him, go out there on a clear night and give the moon a wink. This looking forward to space, I think, is really exciting. And the sun here, this fantastic picture of, you know, this incredible explosion, and, you know, only the Olympic ceremony, only the opening of the Olympic ceremony. It couldn't be anything else. It couldn't be anything but the opening of the Paralympics here.
And it was a real challenge, I suppose, wasn't it, for the people who were putting this together, because we'd already had the opening and closing of the ceremony just a couple of weeks ago, which really took everybody's breath away, and they'd got to do something that was very different, and they've done it.
Absolutely. We've had history in the opening ceremony, music in the closing ceremony, and now we have science. And I really think it shows how many important discoveries in science and in history, and how many great works of music have been made in Britain. We shouldn't forget our heritage.
So there's the Daily Mirror, its souvenir edition as well.
Souvenir edition.
In with a big bang.
Absolutely, in with a big
start.
I love all these different headlines, and of course we've got a picture of the Duchess of Cambridge here, looking marvellous in gold, a dress that she has recycled apparently. And it all just looks fantastic.
And there's a similar picture that we've seen before on the front of the Guardian. And these are works of art. You can imagine having them framed, can't you?
They are works of art. They're so beautiful. I could just see them on my wall. I mean, this is just so appealing. The men flying through the air, and, you know, these great dancers. And, you know, I just think it's so touching. And what we get, especially from the Guardian here, are some real stories about these heroes. You know, female wheelchair rugby player Kylie Grimes, who she jumped into a swimming pool and she broke her neck, and she breaks through it, and now she's an athlete. And all these stories, and this boy, this Nathan Stevens, who lost both legs under a railway train. These people who really battled through, and they won through, and they are great athletes.
This article on The Guardian by Richard Williams is hailing the game, saying that it'll do more than simply extend our enjoyment of sporting spectacle. And this is the difference, isn't it? There'll be so many incredible personal stories. And what surprised me is the few that I've read already is the speed with which some of these people have suffered these terrible accidents, and then they come back, and within a very short few years they're competing in sports in the Olympic, at the most incredible level.
Games. Exactly, and I think we are going to see a lot of these incredible stories, and I think a lot of people will be worthy of a medal. I mean, there's been a whole question of who's going to earn a medal after the Olympic Games. I think if we get another haul of 30 gold medals for our Paralympians, are we going to say these people deserve a medal even more for all the struggles they've been through?
I suppose we've got to come back down to earth with a bit of a bump, haven't we, and tear ourselves away from those beautiful pictures, although there is one on the Financial Times calling it Umbrella Group because of the preponderance of umbrellas that...
Well, we've been using a lot of umbrellas this summer, so I think it's something we've all been waving around quite a lot, but not quite so joyously. So
it was a very good decision, because you can't rely upon the weather. But the Financial Times is leading on a different story.
Yes, the Financial Times, of course, no giant souvenir edition here. Two very interesting stories for the Financial Times. First of all, from Virgin. We've seen a lot from Richard Branson recently, saying, you know, I've lost the franchise. And this story here is telling us, you know, Richard Branson, I've lost the franchise. I'd rather, you know, why has it gone to West Coast?
Let me just explain. There is no headline on my copy of it.
It says, sorry, it says
what
Virgin.
Does it say?
The headline is Virgin earned healthy margins on rail. So what they're saying here is that Virgin have said, you know, we've lost the franchise, we're the best people to do it, West Coast Main Line have got it, but we've got to remember they've had huge profits. They have been very successful, they've reaped higher profits, and this is the question here. It's saying, you know, Richard Branson is saying he wants a review, he's not happy, he's challenging it, and it's saying that, you know, why is it their profits do seem to be lower? Because it says here Virgin has made a big profit over 15 years, and this is the overall question here. I mean, Virgin is saying, we are best to run these trains, but is that true? I mean, we could, you know, they themselves, it seems very odd to me to say, well, you know, we're the best people to run it. So it's not the highest bidders that should get it, it's the best people, because that's completely contravening the way that they've worked before, because you might have examples of them taking over the healthcare in Devon, children's healthcare. You might say the NHS were more experienced than Virgin, but still they get to win it. And I think that it's a very complicated issue, and it's very important that the Financial Times is leading on it. But I think we do have to, you know, are we a capitalist or not? I mean, is it competition or isn't it?
Yes, and they've not been at all happy with the way that the bidding process was dealt with, and they are challenging it, aren't they? Do you want to stay with the FT or move on to the Daily Express?
Well, I think there's just the story here in the Citigroup settling investor lawsuit. This is the third lawsuit we've had in America. Citigroup agreeing to pay $590 million to settle a shareholder lawsuit accusing the bank of failing to fully disclose its exposure to these toxic mortgage products. So we're seeing an avalanche, really, of these lawsuits, saying that the banks made a mistake, they exposed their investors to risk. So they actually, it's almost saying that, you know, is this going to stop banks taking the risk because they're afraid of shareholder lawsuits, or these lawsuits saying they've gone too far?
But the shareholders want to know what they're investing in, don't they? And they have
a
right to pull out if they
they're deceived.
don't like. Yes.
Therefore they've been deceived of how risky these goods were, how risky these products were. They feel they weren't given the true story.
Let's look at the Daily Express, another picture from the Paralympic opening ceremony, but their main story is about Britain subsidising India's navy somehow.
Yes, well, we have this lovely picture here, another fabulous umbrella and explosion. But there's another, we pay for India's navy is their big headline here, so very unlike all the other headlines. And what they're saying is fresh anger over taxpayer aid to India last night has emerged that the country is spending $1 billion on 3 warships. Britain's handing over $280 million a year, even though India admits it doesn't need it. And it's saying that, so not really connected, really. I mean, it's not like they're spending the aid money on these warships. I mean, that's what you might think initially, but the country is spending $1 billion on warships, and it's also given $280 million on aid.
It's sort of conflating two stories, isn't it?
It is
the aid story
stories.
was doing the rounds a few months ago, and India said the money that you give us in aid is peanuts anyway.
Well, yes, I mean, compared to the huge amount of population that India has, I mean, the big gap between rich and poor, India is a martial nation. It's building its army, it's building its navy. At the same time, there are people who are desperately poor in India, who are desperately hungry, who need our help. And of course, some overseas aid does traditionally go to buying arms and weapons, and that's the way it works.
Do you want to just quickly tell us about Theo Walcott?
Theo Walcott, yes. Well, we can breathe easy now, as football fans can breathe easy, because Arsene Wenger is convinced that Theo Walcott will stay at Arsenal after a heart-to-heart meeting yesterday, and he says he's not going to leave. He's committing to a new contract and even discussed the possibility of staying as a central striker, so playing as a central striker. So
clear the air talks. I always wonder just how much that really does clear the air. It's always a bit of a euphemism, I think. Kate, thank you very much for talking us through papers. Nice to see you. Thank you.